My neighbors have been singing happy birthday for 5 hours. I wish I never went upstairs to complain. The last normal sound I heard was my key scraping in the lock. I'd just gotten home from a double shift at the clinic. One of those soul-crushing Sundays where the world keeps turning for everyone else. My apartment building is an old brick thing with 4 floors. I'm on the second. Below me is a woman, Mrs. Petrovic, who keeps to herself. Above me on the 3rd floor are the Henleys, an elderly couple, and next to them, directly over my unit, is an apartment I knew almost nothing about. I'd always just assumed it was a family. Sometimes, through the floorboards, I'd hear the frantic thumping of small feet, or a muffled, high-pitched argument about brushing teeth. Normal, domestic sounds. I'd never seen them, not once. Not in the laundry room, not getting the mail. They were just the noise upstairs. As I fumbled with my keys, exhausted, I heard a new sound from their apartment. A heavy, solid thud, like a sack of potatoes hitting the floor. It was followed by a sharp, surprised gasp, a child's gasp, and then a chorus of urgent, overlapping shushing. Shh, shh, shh. He'll hear, shh. He'll hear. The tone was all wrong, not playful. It sounded desperate. I paused, my key halfway into the lock, listening. The building fell silent. Not just their apartment, the whole building. It was the kind of sudden, absolute quiet that makes the hairs on your arm stand up. They had heard my keys. They were listening to me. I swallowed, a cold knot forming in my gut. I told myself I was just tired. I shoved the door open, stepped inside, and kicked it shut behind me. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy click that felt like the only safe sound in the world. I dropped my bag and started unpacking the few groceries I'd bought. And that's when the singing started. Faintly at first, then gaining strength, a ragged chorus of voices floated down through the ceiling. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Relief washed over me so hard my knees felt weak. A birthday party. Of course. The thud was probably a kid falling over. The shushing was them trying to hide the surprise. I was an idiot. A tired, paranoid idiot. Happy birthday, dear Simeon, I smiled to myself. Simeon. A nice, old-fashioned name. When the song finished, I expected to hear cheering or the sound of wrapping paper. Instead, after a few seconds of silence, they started again. Same key, same strained voices. Happy birthday to you. Okay. A little strange. Maybe the kid, Simeon, loved the song. Kids are weird. I've seen my nephew make my sister sing Baby Shark until she looked like she wanted to set the house on fire. I shrugged it off, put on my headphones, and collapsed onto the couch. The drone of a true crime podcast quickly drowned them out, and I drifted off, the day's exhaustion finally winning. I woke up in that strange, syrupy twilight that only afternoon naps can produce. The sun was setting, casting long, distorted shadows across my living room. My throat was dry and my head was fuzzy. For a moment, I had no idea what time it was or even what day. I pushed myself up and stumbled to the kitchen for a glass of water, my bare feet cold on the linoleum. And then I heard it. They were still singing. It was almost 9 o'clock at night. They had been singing for nearly 5 hours. I took out my headphones and listened. It wasn't a recording. The pitch wavered, voices cracked with fatigue. Sometimes one voice would drop out for a verse, only to rejoin later, breathless. The forced cheerfulness had decayed into something mechanical, something desperate. It was the same simple tune, over and over, but it was starting to feel like a threat. The sound was getting under my skin, a maddening, relentless loop that made my teeth ache. I tried to watch a show, but I couldn't focus. The song bled through the dialogue. I took a shower, hoping the water would drown it out, but I could still feel the vibration in the pipes. It was 10 o'clock, then 10:30. My patience, which was already worn thin, finally snapped. I called my sister, mostly just to hear a different human voice. I told her about my day, but she cut me off. What is that noise in the background? It sounds like a dying cult. It's my upstairs neighbors. They've been singing happy birthday since this afternoon. Are you serious? Zola, it's almost 11. You have to go up there. I don't want to. I've never even met them. So, go meet them. Tell them their kid's birthday is over and some people have to work in the morning. Be an adult. She was right. I sighed, pulled on a hoodie, and slid the deadbolt back. The moment I opened my door, a wave of cold, stagnant air hit me. The hallway was dark, save for the emergency light at the far end, and a sickly yellow glow seeping from under the door of the apartment upstairs. Their door. It was slightly ajar. I crept up the stairs, each step creaking like a scream in the silence between verses. The song was louder up here, hoarse and raw. I reached their door and hesitated, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could smell something from the crack. Melted wax, sugar, and something else. Something coppery and sweet, like old meat. I just wanted to tell them to be quiet, that's all. So I pushed the door open a little wider and peered inside. The entryway was filled with sad, half-deflated balloons and confetti dusting the floor like colorful snow. The light came from a dining room just beyond. Shadows danced on the walls. Around a small table, a group of adults stood clapping, their movements jerky and synchronized. They swayed as they sang, their faces fixed with smiles that looked more like pained grimaces. On the table sat a lopsided cake, its frosting a garish pink, sweating under the heat of a dozen cheap candles that had burned down to flickering stubs. In front of it sat a boy, Simeon. He wore a pointy paper hat that was tilted on his head. He couldn't have been more than 10, but his face was pale and puffy, like dough left out too long, and he was smiling, a wide, vacant smile that showed off all his teeth. They were too big for his mouth. They were an adult's teeth, yellowed and crooked. His eyes were huge and dark, reflecting the candlelight, and I swear to God he did not blink. Not once. He was just staring at the dying flames, his unnaturally long fingers steepled on the table in front of him. On the floor beside him were a few opened presents. One was a small, twisted doll, crudely stitched together from what looked like animal hide and patches of dark, coarse hair. My stomach lurched. I must have made a sound, a hitch in my breath, because his head snapped in my direction. The singing continued, but his eyes locked onto mine. The empty smile on his face didn't falter. It widened. It stretched his pale cheeks until it looked like his face was going to split in two. It was the most terrible thing I have ever seen. My blood turned to ice. I was frozen, pinned by his gaze. Then, with a puff of air that sounded like a dying gasp, he blew out the candles. The room plunged into absolute darkness. The singing stopped. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then, a sound from the dark room. A wet, dragging scrape, moving fast, coming right for the door. Coming for me. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just slammed the door shut and scrambled down the stairs, tripping on the last step. A monstrous, heavy thud slammed into the door I just closed, shaking the entire stairwell. I fumbled with my own door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. I threw myself inside and slammed it shut just as the thing hit the wood from the other side. The impact was immense, a solid, meaty blow that vibrated through the floor. I rammed the deadbolt home, then the scratching started. High and thin, like razors being dragged down the wood. My phone was in my hand. I was trying to dial 911, but my fingers wouldn't work. The scratching stopped, a new sound, a voice. A child's voice whispering from the mail slot. "We have more cake. We saved you a piece." I backed away, stumbling over my own feet, a raw cry tearing from my throat. Suddenly, I heard a door open upstairs. Mr. Henley's voice, old and gravelly. "What in God's name is going on out here? It's the middle of the night." The presence at my door was gone. I crept to the peephole, my whole body trembling. The distorted lens showed the small, dark shape of the boy turning and gliding silently toward Mr. Henley's open door. "I've had enough of this racket," Mr. Henley grumbled. "You people have no consideration, I swear to." His voice cut off in a choked, wet gurgle. There was no scream, just that awful sound, then a soft thud, and the click of Mr. Henley's door swinging shut. Silence. I finally managed to dial 911, my voice a strangled whisper, terrified they would hear me through the door. The 30 minutes it took for the police to arrive felt like 30 years. They sealed off the entire third floor. They wouldn't tell me anything. Their faces were pale and grim. I only got pieces of the story later from a detective who took pity on me. There were no kids living upstairs. It was a man and a woman and two others, things that just looked like kids. The apartment was a slaughterhouse. Mr. Henley was the latest victim. The others, the ones who had been singing, were hostages, people they'd snatched over weeks, forced to play along in their sick little party. The presence, the doll made of human hair, was just the start. I moved out the next day. I'm staying with my sister now, in a house with 3 deadbolts on every door and a state-of-the-art security system. She thinks I'm just traumatized, that I have PTSD. I let her think that. It's easier than telling her the truth. About a week ago, a small package arrived in the mail. It had no return address. My name and my sister's address were written on the front in a shaky, childlike scrawl. Inside was a single Polaroid. The picture was of my old apartment door, taken from the hallway that night. In the top corner of the frame, peeking around the edge of the stairwell, was Simeon's pale, smiling face. I turned it over. 2 words were written on the back. Next year.